Okay, so we live once again. This is Shabazz once again coming back to you with the proper perspective. Gonna do a couple of sound checks before I get really started because I found out last time. Before I get really started because I found out last time. Before I get really started because I found out last time. Before I get really started that the sound was dead, but it seems like everything is beginning to work a little bit okay. So I'm trying to make sure if everything is going correctly this time. I am once again coming live to you on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. However, let it be known, please, if you are joining me on Instagram, I would ask that you please step on over to YouTube, youtube.com/ at the proper perspective. If you're joining me on Facebook or Instagram, please, if you can, come on over to youtube.com/ at the proper perspective, because that is where I am officially going live. That is where you can join in on the chat. And when and if I share the screen, you'll be able to see everything going on there and hearing it, hopefully. If all of the sound checks, I'm doing one more sound check to ensure that everything is still working correctly. If you're joining me in the chat, please let me know that you can hear. Say something, type something, even just put a one for you can hear or a two that you can't hear. So again, we are trying to go live. And again, we are trying to go live. Seems like everything is working correctly. Yes, the red, black, and green is the heart of the matter. I appreciate that from the chat room. Ya Asantiwa. See. Yeah, I believe I got that name right. I should get that name right. Let's what's going on, everybody? How y'all doing tonight? I am struggling a little bit, so please bear with me. This is my second time going live today. The first time I went live, everything went wrong. So you know what they say, when you make a plan, God laughs. So here we go. We're gonna try to get it started again. So I will start with the intro. Like I said again, if you're listening in on Facebook or on Instagram, it behooves you to join me on YouTube so you can see everything in its most effective and clear manner. Let's see what happens when we it looks like I'm not gonna have sound again, but let's see. If I share the screen, let's see. We are going to share the screen, make it wide, share the video, share the audio, and we're gonna see. Here is test number one. Now I got a feeling you can't hear that, so we're gonna just do away with it. Never mind. We got another technical difficulty. So I'm not even gonna worry about that. Um, let's see. Okay, everybody, how you guys doing tonight? So again, we are here to discuss Kwame and Nkrumah. We are here to discuss uh, Pan-Africanism, scientific socialism, Black Power, and its relevance to our world today. Now, let's see if I can get it started. I hope that this is going to play. Share the screen. Kwame Ture. See, now we are sharing the screen. Let's make it big. Everybody can see the good brother. Now,
Pan-Africanism must come from the bottom up,
can
from the
you
masses
hear
of the
it?
people up.
Can you hear
It is here then that we've come to see the real aspect of Pan-Africanism. We said that in the Fifth Pan-African Congress, they called for mass organizations, and immediately
Sound
mass
automatic.
organizations sprang up throughout the length and breadth of the African world. The Conventional People's
Hold
Party,
on.
a mass
So what
party,
we
sprang
gonna
up in
do?
Ghana. The Democratic Party of Guinea, a mass party, sprang up in Guinea. Throughout the length and breadth of Africa, you had the TANU, the Tanzanian African National Union, which is now the CCM. My Swahili is not as good as yours. It's Chumpa, Chimpuraza, Mazuri.
That's very good.
Oh,
We're gonna handle this.
my Swahili is bad. Thank you. Chapa Chapman Puduzi. Exactly.
We're gonna handle this
And
a
that's
different
their
way.
new party. But all over Africa, mass parties sprung up. If you look at the Caribbean, mass parties sprung up. Pan-Africanism must come from the bottom up, from the masses of the people up. It is here then that we've come to see the real aspect of Pan-Africanism.
What we gonna do,
We
ladies
said
and
that in
gentlemen?
the Fifth Pan-African Congress, they called for mass
Is-
organizations, and immediately mass organizations sprang up throughout the length and breadth of the African world.
Play
The
this.
Conventional People's Party, a mass party, sprang up in Ghana. Pan-Africanism must come from the bottom up, from the masses of the people up. It is here then that we've come to see the real aspect of Pan-Africanism. We said that in the Fifth Pan-African Congress, they called for mass
Let
organizations.
me know.
and
I
immediately
hope.
mass
I
organizations
know you
sprang
can
up
see
throughout
it.
the length and breadth of the African world. The Conventional People's Party, a mass party, sprang up in Ghana. The Democratic Party of Guinea, a mass party, sprang up in Guinea. Throughout the length and breadth of Africa, you had the TANU, the Tanzanian African National Union, which is now the CCM.
Throughout the length and breadth of the African world. The Conventional People's Party, a mass party, sprang up in Ghana.
That's very
The
good.
Democratic Party of Guinea.
My Swahili is bad.
Throughout the length and breadth of Africa, you
Thank
had
you.
the
Chapa Chapman
Tanzanian
Puduzi.
African National Union, which is now the
And
CCM.
that's their new party. But all over Africa, mass parties sprung up. If you look at the Caribbean,
I'm gonna
mass
pause
parties
that
sprung
for a
up.
second.
And if you look at the United States,
We are still having all kinds of technical difficulties. So what I'm gonna do is sort of just narrate. Let me see. I'm gonna stop sharing. I'll come back to you, ladies and gentlemen. I know there's some echo going on. I don't know why it's doing that, but I'm gonna work on it later, and we will just struggle through tonight's broadcast and get some things going. So, what I wanted to talk about, what I wanted to share with you and go over this whole question of Pan-Africanism, what it is, what it isn't, and what are we doing with it. So Kwame Ture says that Pan-Africanism is an organizing movement. It is not necessarily an ideology. He says that it was, a lot of times we get into this mindset of thinking Pan-Africanism is a belief, a perspective, a view. And that's not necessarily false, but that's not the best conception of it. So he says that Pan-Africanism has more to do with the goal for Black people all over the world. The goal of Pan-Africanism is liberation. The goal is power and control within our own communities, our own people groups. So whether we're talking about on the continent of Africa or throughout the diaspora. So when you're looking at the diaspora, that's the African American, or FBA, if that's your chosen term, in the contiguous states of the United States and Uncle Sam's Dominion. But that's also Afro-Canadians. That's also African descended people who live in Mexico, African descended people in South America, in the Caribbean nations. We are all an African people. So when you think of it this way, you think really what you're thinking about, what you should be thinking about is unity, solidarity. So that's part of the idea of what Pan-Africanism is. There's a lot of talk nowadays about Pan-Africanism is dead. Certain people, I try not to say those names, but every now and then the name is going to come out. But there are certain people trying to lead these online movements to kill Pan-Africanism. And so what I would say is, if you're trying to kill Pan-Africanism, you are then effectively trying to kill Black power. You're trying to kill Black unity. You're trying to practice what the common enemy has always practiced, which is divide and conquer. So I have a question from somebody in the chat room. Solidarity to what end? Liberation from whom? Liberation from systems of oppression. Liberation from systems of oppression. So because these systems exist, they exist in different forms in every country. Pan-Africanism is not something that says that everybody has to fight the same fight in the same way at the same time. You know, there are Pan-Africanist movements going on the continent of Africa right now. So if you look at the Sahel region and you look at Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali, what they are doing in coming together and kicking out the French, that is a Pan-African movement. They're not necessarily saying the entire continent of Africa has to join them in their fight. No, that's not Pan-African. That's not the purpose of Pan-Africanism. Is not to say everybody has to do the same fight at the same time. Pan-Africanism is just the idea that, look, those three countries said, look, we all got the same problems coming from the same people. We need to unite and work on them together. That is a Pan-African movement. That doesn't mean that everybody else, like if there are countries, I don't think there are, but if there are countries on the continent and they have a good relationship with France, they don't have to sacrifice their good relationship with France because these three countries don't have a good relationship. That's not Pan-Africanism. So again, the idea that you have to be all lock, stock, and barrel into the exact same situation, that's a misconception. So I want to get that clear. I do want to say I am still working on this the video. It's going to be very jumpy tonight as I try to move forward, as I try to move back and forth between playing the video or playing the audio, because for some reason it's not working all in one succinct manner. So I'm trying to pull this thing up now. Let's see. This next section. Let's see if I can get to anti-colonialism and anti-capitalism, because Kwame Ture connects anti-colonialism with anti-capitalism and socialism. Now, let's see if I can pull this up. And what I might do is just focus on just the audio. So let me see now. I'm trying to get up. So if we move on up, like
definite and precise resolutions, which I want to highlight. Of course, Pan-Africanism from the very beginning was anti-colonial. From the very beginning, it was anti-colonial. It was weak. So when they came, they didn't say to the Queen, we're going to put you out the country. They said, you must treat the natives right. You must educate them. You must prepare them for self-government. These are things that are weak, but they were anti-colonial in essence. We must not look at the form. And we got stronger, the more this anti-colonialism will express itself. Now, anti-colonialism is nothing but anti-capitalism, because colonialism is nothing but an offshoot, an aspect of capitalism. Therefore, if you're anti-colonial, you must be anti-capitalist, if you're logical in your thinking, of course, and your actions.
So again, now, I trust that you can hear that. What Kwame Ture is saying is anti-colonialism is anti-capitalism. And he's saying as a liberation struggle, everything has to start. You know the saying, you crawl before you walk. So he says at the beginning of this Pan-Africanist movement, it may not necessarily have been the strongest movement. It may not have had the strongest goals. It may not have had the strongest approaches. So even though they were being Pan-Africanist, they were still working with their enemies, so to speak. So he gives the example of when the Queen of England came, rather than, like they say, hindsight is 2020. So rather than say, look, you're gonna have to let go of all controls. No, they didn't say that, because they were crawling before they were walking and running. So they looked at what was before them. They looked at what's on the table and they began to make their demands. So yes, at the beginning of anything, your demands may be what he calls weak, but he still says, but what they were doing was working on liberation. And they were making demands. If you're going to be here, you're going to have to hire us. Now, this is the same thing that we as Black people in America work with. You know, we've been in this whole liberation struggle all throughout our time here. And so as time goes on, we increase our demands, we learn our lessons. So at one point, the only thing we were articulating, or rather the only thing that was being received, was basic freedom. When you're stuck in chains, then rule number one is get out the chains. But once you get out the chains, then you realize, wait a minute, okay, hold up. Yeah, you finally heard me on getting me out the chains. That ain't all. We're not going to stop this struggle just because we got one of our objectives. Pan-Africanism is the struggle for liberation. And liberation is going to be defined by the dynamics of obtaining power. So until you have full power, like Malcolm X used to say, we want the power to define ourselves, defend ourselves, and proclaim ourselves. This is not just an identity process. This is about control. So if you live in a community, then as a Black community, you want to control everything in that community. Just like we got Chinatown everywhere. In Chinatown, they control everything. It's Chinese. It's a Chinese area. There's Chinese businesses. There's Chinese real estate. There's Chinese this, that, and the other. So in every Black town, in every Black city, in every Black neighborhood, Black people should be controlling it. If you don't have the control, you do not have power. And that's what Pan-Africanism teaches you. That's what you have to work for. That's what you have to fight for. So again, colonialism thrived by exploiting Africa's resources and labor, benefiting European capitalist systems. So again, for example, the transatlantic slave trade fueled the economies of the Americas and Europe while devastating African societies. And today we still see neo-colonialism in the form of unfair trade practices and foreign corporations extracting wealth from Africa, such as in mining industries in the Congo. But it goes on all across the continent. Why is this relevant to the diaspora? So for African Americans, for Afro-Caribbeans, capitalism often manifests as systemic inequality and exploitation. So again, what is at the root of Pan-Africanism is to end exploitation. Capitalism is exploitation. It's going to take forms in different ways at all in all locations. It's never going to look the same. It's going to look different because capitalism is about exploitation. So they're not going to exploit every group, every geographical block, every territory the exact same way. They're going to change their methods based on what it is they're looking to exploit. So Pan-Africanism says we're going to fight against this exploitation based on however the fight comes to us. You know, so no, a Black American or Black American politics per se cannot necessarily fight against the exploitation of cocoa in Ghana. We're not there. But we can fight against the exploitation of just our consumerism. We can fight against the exploitation of our consumerism simply by saying, rather than continuing to purchase everything under the sun with the exploiters, we will shop Black. We will buy Black. That's a beginning process. That's a beginning step of changing the conversation, changing the fight. So again, consider how redlining, if you really want to talk about some other forms of exploitation, consider how redlining I lost my place. Consider how redlining in the US or the economic marginalization of Afro-Colombians in South America mirrors the colonial exploitation that Ture describes. When they go to Africa, they exploit resources. They exploit the land. They exploit the minerals. When they come to America, they exploit the humans. When they go to South America, they may exploit both. Capitalism is a form of exploitation where whatever they deem is valuable and useful, they want to dominate it. They want to colonize it, enslave it, and control it. So Pan-Africanism says wherever the enemy is, we're going to fight the enemy. I'm not going to be trying to defend myself against a left hook if I know you're going to throw a right cross. But I'm still going to fight you. I'm still going to defend myself. I'm not going to bring a knife to a gunfight, but I'm still fighting. Pan-Africanism is about the fight. And it's simply just recognizing that at the same time I'm fighting in New York, people that look like me are fighting in California. And the same time people in California or look like me in California are fighting, people in Ghana are fighting. People in Sudan are fighting. We are all fighting the same type of problem. We're all fighting the same enemy. So again, now, see if I can get to my next section. I'm losing hope on this this video. But if I can get to the video, let's see. Move along to the next section and see if we can get this to work.
Just like them. And this is where the real fight occurs. So therefore, this struggle of confusing the thinking, I told the man, I said, you're talking nonsense. Socialism cannot disappear. It cannot die. He said, yes, it can. I said, no. He said, how do you say that? I said, well, you are judging socialism by socialists. You don't do that. He said, I've never heard such nonsense. If you don't judge socialism by socialists, what do you judge it by? I say, you judge it by its principles. Every system is judged by its principles, never its adherence. So he still saw confusion. He said, you're just talking double talk. I said, okay, do you judge Christianity by Christians?
Now that was a great point. That was a great point. You know, he said he's discussing this encounter, this exchange that he's having with somebody, and the person is trying to insist that Pan-Africanism or socialism is dead. And you hear this a lot from people online. Again, I have my own thought process about these people who make these arguments. To me, it reeks of COINTELPROism, but okay, I'm not trying to go there. So again, he's having this conversation and he's saying that Pan-Africanism is not dead. And the people that are trying to say that it is dead, he's, you know, cracking a joke. I didn't get the memo. You cannot judge the ideology, the framework. You cannot judge Pan-Africanism or socialism by the adherents. And even though people will still try to say that, okay, well, if that's the case, like as if there is no such thing as a martyr. You know, you have martyrs because they die for an idea, they die for a movement, they die for a cause, they die to inspire, whether they wanted to or not, but they die, and the followers come through and maintain the struggle. It doesn't die out. And that's part of his point. His point is you cannot proclaim that it's dead just because proponents of that school of thought are dead. You cannot proclaim that it's dead just because the adherents have been killed or they don't necessarily even live up to the full standard of it. And his perfect example is, do you allow, especially if you're a Christian, but this applies to anybody's religion, whether you're a Christian, Muslim, Jew, what have you, do you allow people to judge your religion by the adherents? Of course not. Now, a lot of us would say, a lot of us might want to make the argument that we should, but in the reality of it, what do Christians always say? If us pro-black folk, if us woke folk, if us anti-religious folk, when we say you should get rid of Christianity because it was given to us through the slave turmoil, and Christians say you can't judge the book, you can't judge the Bible, you can't judge Jesus by the people that did all that horrendous stuff. Now, it might make for great dialogue, it might make for great debates, but there's a worthy point to this. If we are going to continually be told not to judge the book by the cover, if we're going to be told don't judge Christianity by the adherents, because Lord knows those adherents didn't live up to the so-called belief system, then you don't judge Pan-Africanism because you find one particular Pan-Africanist that you don't think is doing what they're supposed to be doing. The fight is the fight. And the fight is, if you say that the fight is dead, what does that say about you? So you've given up, you've sold out. Don't tell me you like Snoop Dogg then and Nelly. So again, his point, he emphasizes that socialism's principles, Pan-Africanism's principles, endure regardless of individual betrayals. And he goes on to say, like, what would have happened if you're going to judge the religion, the school of thought, by the adherents? There'd be no Christianity. Because look at Judas. This point is crucial. Betrayals by leaders don't invalidate the movement's core principles. Just as Christianity isn't judged solely by the actions of Judas or those human traffickers, socialism shouldn't be, Pan-Africanism shouldn't be dismissed because of a corrupt leader here and there, or there and here. You still had leaders like Thomas Sankara. So it's like for every bad example somebody might throw out at you, you got good examples. You had Thomas Sankara from Burkina Faso. That was then, and even now you got Ibrahim Traore. But these examples showcase the potential of Pan-Africanism, socialism, and the fight for liberation and control. The proponents of these movements, they prioritized education, healthcare, they prioritized women's rights, they shut down all types of exploitation. Yes, there are betrayals, like Mobutu Sese Seko in the Congo, and they illustrate the dangers of losing sight of the collective good. But you cannot say, they say, cut off the head and the body will follow. That's what happens a lot of times, but we can't afford to let that happen. We can't afford to let that happen. We have to have a way, a method, a means of, if they cut off one head, we got to be that triple-headed dragon, that multi-headed dragon. So if one head gets cut off, here come another one. And in essence, that's what Pan-Africanism is. Now, it may take time to get that new head to grow. They killed Martin Luther King, they killed Malcolm X, but the movement isn't dead. We may be in this growth period where we are percolating and trying to, there is a new leader, there is a new head forming. It just hasn't manifested yet. But Pan-Africanism ain't dead. As long as we are not free, then we're still fighting. So whether you're an Afro descendant in Canada, or you're an African American or a foundational Black American, the fight is the fight. And these Pan-Africanist, socialist, self-empowerment principles have inspired community-based solutions like cooperative economics. What that sound like? Sound like something out of the Nguzo Saba, right? When we did Black Wall Street, yeah, they burned it down. Most of us don't even know that even though they burned it down, we immediately began rebuilding it again. Now, yes, it's still, even the second coming of Black Wall Street still ran into a brick wall, and it doesn't necessarily exist, at least not in the way today that it did back then. But again, that's a testament to the fight. You get knocked down, you get back up. So again, more people need to, we do a lot better to go back and listen to Kwame Ture than to listen to people saying, we need to delineate. Because your delineation tactics ain't doing nothing. Your delineation tactics ain't doing nothing. And in this next section, let me pull this up, because this next section is crucial. One of the key components of capitalism is confusion. One of the key components of capitalism is confusion. It's capitalism seeks to confuse your thinking so that it can exploit the labor. Another way to say it is divide and conquer. Now, I may have to replay a little bit in order to get this, and then to get this to really land the plane, so to speak. So I'm gonna play this next segment.
To me, but socialism died. I said, it did. He said, yeah, hear about it. I said, I missed the funeral. Of course, he spoke about the betrayals that occurred in the East. You must not let capitalism confuse your thinking. This is a struggle which Pan-Africanism takes on. We struggle against imperialism in the ideological arena because many people think that capitalism just wants to exploit your labor. It wants to confuse your thinking and make you think just like them. And this is where the real fight occurs. So therefore, this struggle of confusing the thinking, I told the man, I said, you're talking nonsense. Socialism cannot disappear. It cannot die. He said, yes, it can. I said, no. He said, how do you say that? I said, well, you are judging socialism by socialists. You don't do that. He said, I've never heard such nonsense. If you don't judge socialism by socialists, what do you judge it by? I say, you judge it by its principles. Every system is judged by its principles, never its adherence. So he still saw confusion. He said, you're just talking double talk. I said, okay, do you judge Christianity by Christians? So we must not be confused here. Socialism doesn't fall because of betrayal. No system does. The person who betrays themselves goes to the mud, but the system, with its eternal principles, keep marching on. If a system fell because of betrayal, Christianity would have been finished with Judas. At least Judas had the dignity to hang himself. Some of these who betray socialism don't have that dignity. Gorbachev still runs around speaking and picking up 30 pieces of silver everywhere. Yeah. So socialism is an economic system, and there can only be two in the world, capitalism or socialism, because every economic system must answer one fundamental question: who will own and control the wealth of the country?
Who will own and control the wealth of the country? Who will own and control the wealth of the community? So again, yes, the primary focus of his speech may have been the country, because he's talking about the continent, but this is true within our own community. If you are in America, the Black community. If you are in Brazil, the Black Brazilian community, so on and so forth. Who will own and control the wealth? Whatever that wealth is. It may be mineral wealth in Africa. It may be human capital in Black America or in Black Canada. But who owns it? Who controls it? That's the fight. That's the struggle. And that is what capitalism seeks to control. And they want to do it by confusing your thinking. The more they make you think in a capitalistic mindset, the more they make you think individualism is the key to prosperity, the more they got you in their grasp. Individualism has never helped Black people. Yes, there are a few, there's always going to be a few people who rise to the top. But this is the thing, because they want you to think that only under a capitalistic system can an individual make themselves into a millionaire. And the truth of the matter is that's just simply false. There are countries that practice socialism. They got millionaires. There are countries that practice communism. They got millionaires. So if the idea, if the goal, if people are trying to buy into capitalism because they think that the only way that they can have a clear path to becoming rich and wealthy and reaching the millionaire, billionaire status, that's just false. Capitalism makes you think the only way you can make it is in the capitalistic world, society, and mindset. But all systems of governance have ways and means through which individuals can become wealthy. Somebody says in the chat, Darius Williams says in the chat, I feel as if any form of market or government would work, but if the government is corrupt, it don't matter. Now, I agree with that. I agree with that. You know, I'm not going to entirely say that every last element and aspect of capitalism is the devil. But which systems lend themselves to corruption, which systems have been capitalized upon, excuse the pun, by devilish minded people, you know, we can have a discussion on that. But like I said, if you're trying to protect capitalism so that you too can become a millionaire, you know, you can become a millionaire under any form of government. So that's not a reason to throw Pan-Africanism aside. That's not a reason to throw socialism aside. That's not a reason to throw away Ubuntu, the idea from South Africa of connectivity. We are all connected, whether we know it or not, whether we think it or not. So again, capitalism doesn't just exploit labor. It manipulates minds. It manipulates minds. For example, colonial education systems taught Africans to see themselves as inferior and dependent. That's key, dependent on Western powers. See, it's like a two-pronged fight, because we can even say that to some extent today, we've gotten over part of that inferiority complex. You know, we walk around, got the melanin popping. We walk around proud of our black skin, proud of our Africanity, at least in some circles. So in that regard, we've done a lot of fighting against this confused thinking that capitalism seeks to create. But even the most enlightened of us, we've still not been able to form a specific governing body, at least, you know, in the contiguous 48 in the United States. On the continent, it's a little, it is and it isn't in some places. A lot of people are definitely looking at the Sahel region because they are coming together in a stronger sense for Pan-Africanism in this Ubuntu and solidarity. But we are still largely dependent on the capitalists, the Western powers. And I'll say, you know, I lost my train of thought again. In the diaspora, this dependence a lot of times manifests as internalized racism and consumerism but those ideas, those problems, they are designed, they are created, they are given to us through the system because it sustains exploitation. If you don't think that much of yourself, then the way in which you improve your self-image is through materialism. And who does that help? It helps the Western powers. It helps the capitalists. It helps the Gucci, Louis, Pradas of the world. But, you know, as you begin to shake off that self-loathing, you begin to say, you know, I don't need that stuff. That's a threat to the power structure. The very reason when we are in protest mode, 60s, civil rights, so on and so forth, the key to it all was our solidarity, our unity, and our boycotting. not for the not the protest itself, not the rally itself, but the boycott, the refusal to spend money. That's what brings the system down. That's what stops everything, halts everything. So, as an example, let me see. Again, consider how African Americans were historically denied fair wages while being bombarded with media narratives portraying them as inferior. Meanwhile, Afro Brazilians were forced into low wage jobs post abolition, sustaining economic disparities that still persist to this day. But so that's the problem that sits at our table, so to speak. And this is what we fight through Pan-Africanism. This confusion isn't accidental. Media and education systems often glorify Western values while demeaning African contributions, ensuring that African descendants remain disconnected and disempowered. Pan-Africanism challenges this by fostering pride and reclaiming narratives. So again, for me, Pan-Africanism is Afrocentricity, is Black power, is African-centered thinking. It is the truth. So we are tasked to fight the school system so that we can rewrite the curriculum. You know, we're in January, we're coming up, at least for America, we're coming up on Black History Month, and I need all these people, Black, it's the shortest month. I don't care that it's the shortest month. Make sure that the curriculum is jam-packed with the right information, and then worry about which month you want to spread that in. So again, I'm leading into my next section anyhow. Pan-Africanism and Black Power. So I'm gonna get this little clip up. Kwame Ture connects Pan-Africanism with Black Power, emphasizing the importance of unity and a clear objective. So let me get on up here.
Matter of fact, I can say it in 2 words: Black Power.
I can say it in 2 words: Black Power.
And today we've gone to 1, Pan-Africanism.
And from Black Power, we go to
There are only 2
Pan-Africanism.
economic systems, and it's going to be capitalism or socialism. Capitalism is a backward system. There's no need to discuss it. Certainly anyone who's been made a slave by capitalism ought to be hesitant in trying to support the system. But as a conscious African, I must be against capitalism, and I must, of course, seek to destroy it. So when you speak of Pan-Africanism, you must understand you speak of socialism. And we want to underline there's only one socialism out here, and that's scientific socialism, whose principles are abiding and universal. There's no such thing as African socialism, Chinese socialism, Russian socialism, Arab socialism. There's only one socialism. The confusion arises over ideology. That is that which guides you towards your objective. So we're saying clearly here, Pan-Africanism is not an ideology. It is an objective. It is an achievable. Pan-Africanism is the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism.
The total liberation. The total liberation. Pan-Africanism is the total liberation. So again, Pan-Africanism is the broader framework that unites the global African diaspora, while Black Power is the actionable force behind it. Black Power calls for self-determination, control over our communities, and resistance to oppression. This is not a game, and it's definitely not dead. If we were in control, if we had our, let me slow down. For African Americans, if African Americans had their own country, then African Americans might be able to say, Pan-Africanism is dead. We don't need it anymore. Only if we had our own country, and we do not. Even if we had our own country, I would still beg to differ. But as long as you are living in an oppressed system, then liberation is still the clarion call of the day. So another example, during the Civil Rights era, groups like the Black Panther Party in the US and the Black Consciousness Movement in South Africa exemplified Black power by fighting for political and economic autonomy, which is what we don't have, especially in America. On the continent, leaders like Nkrumah and Nyerere embedded these principles in their governance. Now, yeah, we went through an extremely turbulent 60s where Western powers systematically went through and wiped out all leaders. You know, a lot of, if you're not that well read, I understand it because it's not going to get taught in the American school system, at least. But the same way we lost Malcolm X and we lost Martin Luther King, no matter what you think about them, you may be somebody that don't like one or the other. I don't care. You cannot deny the fact that they were at the top of the leadership movement or roles. They were assassinated by Western powers. The lead, the head, the primary Pan-African leader in Ghana was, if not assassinated, then defamed and overthrown. The lead, the head, the primary Pan-African leaders in the Congo, in South Africa, in Sudan, in Uganda, everyone was wiped out. So we should be in a time period now where we are reconfiguring. So whether you're Afro-Mexican, or I would say for Afro-Mexicans, Black Power could mean amplifying their voices in national narratives. Afro-Caribbeans have long embodied this spirit through independence movements, such as those in Haiti, Jamaica, Trinidad. Together, these efforts reflect Pan-Africanism in action. So again, Kwame Ture's point is they are one and the same. They are synonymous. If you speak of socialism, you speak of Pan-Africanism. And he says there's only one socialism. Don't get twisted. Don't get confused with the variations. Yes, there may be something that's going to operate differently if you're in an African country from being in an Arabian country, but it's still scientific socialism. Don't let the confusion take root, because that's the job of the capitalist. That's the job of the enemy, to make you confused, to divide and conquer. He says Pan-Africanism is the objective. So you can never get by with the idea that the objective is dead. You can never get by with the idea that liberation and freedom is dead, unless you just want to bend over and let the world do to you what they will. Is that what you're saying? By defining Pan-Africanism as the objective, Kwame Ture reminds us that it's not just an abstract idea, but it is a tangible goal. This goal, uniting Africa, uniting Black people all across the globe, requires dismantling borders, reclaiming resources, and building systems that serve the people. Now, just on the dismantling borders part, if you look all across Africa, even today, especially the young people, everybody is saying, wait a minute, these borders ain't making a lot of sense. These borders don't serve us. They don't help us. The fact that we had the ECOWAS organization, like there were regional organizations where the West was trying to come together, the East was trying to come together, the Central was trying to come together, the South and the North were all coming together and creating new blocks so that they could, at the very least, collapse the borders within the region, and then later on work towards a full unification. And yeah, there were some problems with ECOWAS. And yeah, there's some problems with ECOWAS. But again, the very fact that Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso reconfigured themselves means they're still fighting the fight. They're still working on a Pan-Africanist objective of liberation and self-governing power. And yes, it remains to be seen what's going to happen with ECOWAS. The new president of Ghana has said that he's interested in walking away from ECOWAS and joining the Alliance of Sahelian States. So again, you still have the unification goal. Let's see. Efforts like the African Continental Free Trade Area, are steps toward economic unification or other steps. Efforts like CARICOM in the Caribbean is a Pan-Africanist movement where all of the Caribbean nations have gotten together. And in this regard, they're years ahead of the African Americans because they've gotten together and created a governing organization whose job it is to work on reparations. And this is what kills me about these online social media influencers who want to tell us that we need to separate from the rest of the Black world. They tell us that we need to delineate and distinguish ourselves from the rest of the Black people so that we can get reparations, as if separating yourself obtains reparations. You know, they're not telling you create an organization and fight for it. They're just telling you check out such and such's background, see where his grandfather was born. And it's so many of us falling for this mess. But CARICOM is a Pan-Africanist movement whose objective is to obtain reparations. How? By working on legal matters, by working on legislation, by dealing with the governments who owe the money. They're not online trying to dox somebody. They're not online trying to put down somebody because they were born on a different island or born in a different territory. So for African Americans, if you want reparations from Uncle Sam, where's your organization? Stop listening to these blowhards. Stop listening to these fake leaders who are simply doing the job of divide and conquer that Uncle Sam is paying them to do. And look for the people that are trying to work towards reparations. I don't care if you say, well, NCOBRA is an old organization. Well, what's your new one? Get with NCOBRA and find out who are the lawyers working on reparations. Instead of trying to figure out who is this person's grandfather. Was he born in Jamaica or Florida? For African Americans, Afro-Mexicans, and others, Pan-Africanism provides a framework for reconnecting with the continent and advocating for policies that benefit all African descendants globally. If CARICOM can work towards getting reparations, then Africans in America need a CARICOM. Africans in Canada need a CARICOM. African Americans have increasingly engaged with the continent through initiatives like the Year of Return in Ghana. You know, a Pan-Africanist movement that we were a part of before was helping in apartheid. But these Pan-Africanist connections foster cultural and economic ties. I can't stress this enough. It's not just about culture. Economic ties. You can set up businesses in Africa. You can set up businesses in Jamaica. You can set up businesses in Brazil instead of simply just yapping online about an immigrant. Afro-Mexicans, Afro-Latinos are asserting their identity and history, pushing for recognition and equal rights, which aligns with Pan-Africanism's call for solidarity and justice. Even our brothers and sisters all the way out there in New Guinea, Papua New Guinea, in Australia. Afro-Brazilians' advocacy for Quilombo land rights also reflects a shared struggle against historical injustices. Now, Christophe says, why leave America to set up a business? Oh, I don't know. Ask all the other billionaires. Again, if you're capitalistic minded and you want to preserve capitalism so that you too can become a millionaire and a billionaire, you might need to leave America. Why do you think the other corporations do it? Look, I'm not going to belabor the point that much more. I'm going to get ready to get out of here. In conclusion, I'm going to say Kwame Ture's insights into Pan-Africanism remain as relevant today as ever. From the grassroots movements of the past to the ongoing struggles across Africa and in the diaspora, the call for unity, liberation transcends borders. Now, feel free still, leave a comment. How do you see Pan-Africanism shaping our future? You can't say it's dead because you ain't free. Pan-Africanism is socialism. Socialism is Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism is Black Power. Black Power is Pan-Africanism. It ain't dead unless you no longer here. As long as there's Black people on this planet, and as long as there are oppressive enemies working to oppress us, and we're fighting back, Pan-Africanism is alive and well. Now, before I get out of here, I will read Shabaka's comment. Reparations comes from an organized people. You can achieve nothing without unity and organization. Africa and African people must unite worldwide. That's a perfect way for me to end this. So again, I would say, please, if you haven't already, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I thank you for paying attention. I thank you for listening. I thank you for joining in on the chat. Hit the like button so that you can tune in the next time I go live. And I will see you on the other side. That's my proper perspective. Peace.